They said the vacation was just for the three of us and booked a luxury cruise without me. I didn't argue. I just moved out, changed my number, and sent back every gift they'd ever given me. They came back to silence. My name is Louise, and 7 months ago, this is the story of how my so-called best friend showed me exactly where I stood in their lives, and how I decided to show them the same courtesy in return. For context, I had been best friends with Emma and Jessica since college. We were inseparable for 8 years, the kind of trio that finished each other's sentences and had matching tattoos. We'd been through everything together. Breakups, job losses, family drama, you name it. Or so I thought. The three of us had been planning our dream vacation for 2 years. Every Friday night, we'd sit around my apartment with wine and Pinterest boards, fantasizing about tropical destinations. We had a shared savings account specifically for this trip, each of us contributing $300 every month without fail. By last March, we had saved nearly $21,600 for what was supposed to be the vacation of a lifetime. Emma worked as a marketing coordinator at a tech startup. Jessica was a nurse at the local hospital, and I was a graphic designer at a small agency. We weren't rich by any means, but we were disciplined about our dream trip. We even made a pact to stay single until after the vacation because, and I quote Emma, no boys were going to mess up our girls' trip. The first red flag should have been when they started having planning sessions without me. Emma would casually mention over lunch, "Oh, Jess and I looked at some cruise packages yesterday." Or Jessica would text the group chat about resort options she'd stumbled upon during her night shift. When I'd ask for details or suggest we all look together, they'd brush it off with, "We're just doing preliminary research," or "We'll show you everything this weekend." But weekends would come and go, and somehow we never got around to those planning sessions. There was always something. Emma had a work emergency. Jessica picked up an extra shift, or they'd already made other plans. I started to feel like I was chasing them for information about a trip I was equally invested in, both financially and emotionally. The second red flag was more subtle. They started having inside jokes I wasn't part of, references to things they'd apparently discuss when I wasn't around. When I'd ask what they were talking about, they'd exchange glances and say it was nothing important or just something silly. The worst part was the way they'd look at each other like they were sharing a secret I wasn't cool enough to be part of. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in May. I was at my apartment working late on a project when I got a text in our group chat from Emma. "Girls, amazing news. I found the perfect cruise package. 7 days in the Caribbean, luxury suite, all inclusive. It's exactly what we dreamed about." I immediately called her, excited to hear the details. The conversation started normally enough. She was gushing about the ship's amenities, the ports we visit, the spa packages. Then I asked when we were leaving. "Oh, that's the best part," she said, her voice practically vibrating with excitement. "The dates work perfectly for all three of us. We leave next Monday." "Next Monday?" I repeated, confused. "Emma, I can't possibly get time off with less than a week's notice. My boss would kill me, and we have 3 major client presentations scheduled for next week." There was a pause, a long pause. Then she said in a tone I'd never heard from her before, "Well, Louise, maybe this trip just isn't meant for you." I felt like I'd been slapped. "What do you mean it's not meant for me? We've been planning this together for 2 years. We have a shared savings account. This is our trip." "Actually," Emma continued, her voice getting colder, "Jessica and I have been talking, and we think it might be better if it was just the three of us this time." "Just the three of us?" I was so confused. I thought I'd misheard. "Emma, there are 3 of us. You, me, and Jessica." Another pause. Then the words that are still burned into my memory. "No, Louise, Jessica. Me and my boyfriend named Derek. We've been seeing each other for 2 months now, and this feels like the perfect opportunity for a romantic getaway. You understand, right?" I sat in my apartment, phone pressed to my ear, trying to process what I was hearing. Emma, who had made us all promise to stay single for our girls' trip, had not only been secretly dating someone, but was now replacing me with him on the vacation we planned and saved for together. "What about the money?" I managed to ask. "Oh, don't worry about that. Derek's covering your portion. Think of it as us buying you out." "Buying me out? Like I was a business partner being dissolved, not a best friend being replaced. Emma, I said quietly, we've been planning this trip for 2 years. Every month, I've put money into that account instead of taking vacations with my family or buying things I wanted. This wasn't just about the money. This was about us. Look, Louise, I know you're upset, but you're being dramatic. It's just a vacation. We'll plan something else for the three of us later. Just a vacation. 2 years of dreaming, saving, and planning dismissed as just a vacation. I hung up and immediately called Jessica, hoping she'd be the voice of reason. Surely she wouldn't be okay with this betrayal of our friendship. Jessica answered on the first ring, which should have been my first clue that she was expecting my call. Jess, please tell me you're not okay with this, I said with that preamble. Louise, I was hoping Emma would explain it better, she said with a sigh. Look, you know I love you, but Emma is really happy with Derek. And honestly, having a guy along might be fun. It'll change the dynamic in a good way. Change the dynamic. Jessica, this was supposed to be our trip, our girls' trip, our dream vacation that we've been planning since senior year of college. Plans change, Louise. That's life. Plans don't change, Jessica. People change them. And apparently you and Emma changed this one without bothering to include me in the decision. You're being overdramatic. It's not like we're ending our friendship. We're just taking one trip without you. One trip. The trip. The dream vacation that had kept me motivated through bad days at work and tight financial months. The trip that represented 8 years of friendship and 2 years of careful planning. After I hung up with Jessica, I sat in my apartment for a long time staring at the Pinterest board we'd created together. Pictures of crystal clear water, white sand beaches, and cruise ship decks filled with happy people. In every image I'd saved, I had imagined the three of us laughing and making memories that would last a lifetime. That's when it hit me. They'd already made their decision. This wasn't a conversation or a negotiation. They were informing me of what they'd already planned. Emma and Jessica had been plotting this behind my back for who knows how long, and they expected me to just smile and accept being replaced. But here's the thing about being betrayed by people you love. It clarifies things remarkably quickly. I opened my laptop and started making my own plans. If Emma and Jessica wanted to show me where I ranked in their priorities, I was more than happy to show them the same courtesy. First, I called my bank and discovered that while I couldn't close the shared account unilaterally, I could remove my name from it and request that my contributions be calculated and transferred to my personal account. Since I had been meticulous about tracking my deposits, I had records showing I had contributed exactly $7,200 over the past 2 years. The bank processed the transfer within 2 business days, leaving Emma and Jessica to figure out how to manage the remaining funds on their own. Next, I started looking at apartments. I had been living in a 2-bedroom place that Emma crashed at constantly. She probably spent 4 nights a week at my place, using my Netflix, eating my food, and treating it like her second home. Jessica was there almost as much. My lease was up for renewal in 6 weeks anyway, so I decided to expedite the process. I found a beautiful 1-bedroom apartment across town in a neighborhood none of us had ever talked about or visited together. It was more expensive, but it was mine, completely mine. I put down a deposit that night and arranged to move in exactly 4 weeks, 2 weeks after they returned from their cruise, which would give me time to pack properly while they were gone. Then I did something that felt both petty and empowering. I went through my apartment and gathered every single gift Emma and Jessica had ever given me. Birthday presents, Christmas gifts, random thinking of you items, souvenirs from their trips, everything. I packed it all carefully in boxes, organized by giver. The pile was bigger than I expected. 8 years of friendship had accumulated a lot of gifts. Emma's box contained the coffee table book about travel photography she'd given me for my birthday, the vintage band t-shirt she'd found at a thrift store, the succulent and the hand-painted pot, and dozens of other items. Jessica's box had the jewelry she'd made in her pottery class, the books she'd recommended and bought for me, the cozy blanket she'd given me during my last breakup, and more. Looking at all these gifts, I felt a mixture of sadness and anger. Each item represented a moment when I thought our friendship was real and mutual. Now they felt like props in a relationship that had apparently been one-sided. I wrote identical notes to go with each box. Since our friendship seems to have run its course, I thought you should have these back. I hope your cruise is everything you dreamed it would be. Louise. I arranged for the boxes to be delivered to their apartments on the Tuesday after they left for the cruise. Emma had mentioned they were leaving on Monday morning, and I confirmed this by checking Emma's Instagram stories the day they left. She'd posted a picture of her packed suitcase with Cruise Day written across it. I wanted them to come home to a reminder of what they'd thrown away. The hardest part was changing my phone number. I had the same number since high school. Emma and Jessica had it memorized, but that was exactly the point. I went to my cell phone store and got a new number, a clean slate. I updated my information with work, family, and other friends, but I didn't give the new number to Emma or Jessica. Finally, I updated all my social media accounts. I untagged myself from years of photos with them, unfriended them on Facebook, and unfollowed them on Instagram, but I didn't block them immediately. I wanted to see their cruise posts first to confirm they had actually left. I blocked them on Snapchat since I never used it anyway. I didn't make any dramatic posts or announcements. I just quietly started erasing them from my digital life the same way they tried to erase me from their vacation. The 4 weeks between my planning and their departure were surreal. Emma texted me a few times, asking if I was still mad, and suggesting we talk about this like adults. Jessica sent me memes and acted like nothing had happened. I responded minimally, giving them no indication of what I was planning. During those 4 weeks, I started seeing their friendship and our entire dynamic with shocking clarity. It was like someone had handed me glasses after years of blurry vision. How many times had Emma made plans without consulting me, then presented them as group decisions? How many times had Jessica agreed with whatever Emma wanted, leaving me as the perpetual third boat that didn't matter? I remembered Emma's birthday party 2 years ago when she decided she wanted to go to an expensive steakhouse. I had mentioned that my budget was tight that month, and instead of choosing somewhere more affordable or offering to split my portion, Emma had rolled her eyes and said, "God, Louise, it's one dinner. Can't you just put it on a credit card?" Jessica had nodded along, and I'd ended up spending money I didn't have, rather than being labeled as cheap or difficult. Then there was the time Jessica wanted to take a pottery class, and somehow it became something all three of us were definitely doing together. When I mentioned I was more interested in the photography workshop happening at the same time, Emma had dismissed it with, "Come on, Louise. Pottery will be so much more fun for all of us. You can do photography anytime." I gone along with it, spending 6 weeks learning a skill I had no interest in while the photography workshop filled up. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that our decisions had almost always been Emma's preferences with Jessica's immediate agreement and my eventual compliance. I had mistaken this pattern for friendship, when really, it was just me being managed by people who had learned exactly how much pushback I'd give before I'd cave. Even our living situation reflected this dynamic. Emma practically lived at my apartment, but somehow I was always the one buying groceries, replacing the toilet paper, and cleaning up after her visits. When I'd mentioned how much my utilities had increased since she started staying over so often, she'd laughed and said, "What are friends for?" But when I'd asked if I could crash at her place for a few days while my air conditioning was being repaired, she'd made excuses about her roommate and suggested I get a hotel room. I started paying attention to how they interacted when they thought I wasn't listening closely. At coffee shops, I'd noticed Emma and Jessica making eye contact over my head when I was talking, sharing silent communications that excluded me. They'd reference conversations they'd had without me, then act surprised when I didn't know what they were talking about. The worst realization was about my birthday last year. I had specifically mentioned wanting to try the new rooftop restaurant downtown, had even shown them pictures and suggested we make reservations. On the day of my birthday, Emma had surprised me with plans to go to the same chain restaurant we always went to, saying she'd already made reservations and knew I'd love the familiar atmosphere. Jessica had agreed enthusiastically about how cozy and perfect it would be. I'd spent my birthday dinner smiling and pretending to be grateful, while internally feeling completely unseen. As I packed my belongings, I found more evidence of how one-sided our friendships had become. My closet contained clothes I bought because Emma said they'd look good on me, even though I didn't like them. My bookshelf had novels Jessica had insisted I'd love, most of which I'd never finished because they weren't my taste at all. My kitchen cabinets were stocked with snacks and drinks that Emma and Jessica preferred, not me. I had slowly been molding myself into the friend they wanted, rather than being the person I actually was. And the most pathetic part, I've been grateful for their friendship, constantly worried about maintaining it, never realizing that real friends wouldn't require me to shrink myself to fit their preferences. During those 4 weeks, I also started remembering all the times I'd been genuinely excited about something, only to have Emma and Jessica react with polite disinterest or subtle discouragement. When I gotten promoted to senior designer, Emma's first comment had been, "Wow, that's great, but I hope the extra work won't make you too busy for us." When I'd started dating my last boyfriend, Michael, Jessica had immediately started pointing out his flaws and questioning whether he was really right for me. When I'd mentioned wanting to take a solo trip to visit my college roommate in Portland, they'd both acted hurt that I'd want to travel without them. I realized they trained me to seek their approval for everything, to prioritize their comfort over my own desires, and to feel guilty for having interests or relationships outside of our trio. The cruise situation wasn't an aberration. It was a logical conclusion of a friendship where my role had always been to be available, accommodating, and grateful for whatever scraps of consideration they threw my way. The most telling moment came during week 3 of my secret preparations. Emma called me on a Tuesday night, ostensibly to check in, but really to ease her own guilt about the cruise situation. "I know you're probably still upset about the vacation thing," she said, "but I want you to know that Jessica and I were talking, and we're definitely going to plan something special for just the 3 of us when we get back. Maybe a spa weekend or something." A spa weekend, after excluding me from the dream vacation we'd planned for 2 years. She was offering me a consolation prize of a 2-day trip to a local spa. "That's thoughtful of you to consider," I said neutrally. "I mean, I know it's not the same as the cruise, but Derek has never been on a real vacation, and this just seemed like the perfect opportunity for him to experience something amazing." "You understand, right? You've been on cruises before." I had been on exactly one cruise 5 years ago with my family. Emma knew this, but in her mind, my previous cruise experience somehow made me less deserving of this one, while Derek's lack of cruise experience made him more deserving of the trip I had saved for and planned. "Plus," she continued, "you know how Jessica gets when she feels left out of couple stuff. Having Derek along means she won't feel like a third wheel, and you know how important her comfort is to me." Jessica's comfort was important. Derek's vacation experience was important. Emma's relationship was important, but my feelings about being excluded from something I'd invested 2 years of my life into. That was just me being upset about the vacation thing. "Emma," I said carefully, "when you and Jessica decided to invite Derek instead of including me, did either of you consider how I might feel about that?" There was a pause. "Of course we did, Louise. We felt bad about it, but sometimes you have to make tough decisions. And we thought you'd understand that relationships require compromise." Whose relationship required this compromise? Because it seems like the compromise was me giving up something at work towards, so that you could have a romantic getaway. "You're being dramatic again," Emma said, her tone shifting to annoyance. "It's just one trip. We'll take plenty of trips together in the future." Just one trip. The trip. The culmination of 2 years of budgeting and dreaming and planning. The trip that had motivated me through overtime hours and skipped social events and generic brand groceries. Just one trip. "You're right," I said. "It is just one trip. I hope you all have a wonderful time." After I hung up, I sat in my half-packed apartment and felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. For the first time in months, I wasn't trying to make Emma understand my perspective or convince Jessica to consider my feelings. I wasn't managing their emotions or worrying about their reactions. I was just done. The final week before their departure, I threw myself into work with an energy I'd forgotten I possessed. I had arranged with my boss to take some flexible hours for apartment hunting, which gave me the time I needed for my preparations while maintaining my work commitments. Without the constant background stress of navigating Emma and Jessica's moods and needs, I found myself more creative and focused than I'd been in years. I completed projects ahead of schedule, impressed my boss with innovative design concepts, and even started sketching ideas for the freelance business I'd been talking about for years, but never had the mental space to pursue. My coworkers noticed the change, too. My colleague, Maria, commented that I seemed lighter and asked if I'd been getting more sleep. My boss mentioned that my recent work had been some of my best and hinted at additional responsibilities and a potential raise. It was like I'd been carrying invisible weights that I didn't realize were there until I set them down. I also started reaching out to friends I'd neglected during my years of focusing on Emma and Jessica. My college roommate Rachel was thrilled to hear from me and immediately started planning a visit. My cousin Tom, who lived across the country, told me he'd been wanting to invite me to his wedding, but thought I was too busy with those girlfriends of yours to travel. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, who I'd always chatted with briefly in the hallway, invited me for tea and turned out to be one of the most interesting people I'd ever met. It was astounding how much social energy I'd been pouring into two people and how much richer my life became when I redirected that energy toward people who actually reciprocated it. 3 days before Emma and Jessica left for their cruise, I had my final interaction with them as friends. We ran into each other at our usual coffee shop, the one I'd been avoiding for weeks, but had stopped by because I was in the neighborhood for apartment hunting. Jessica saw me first and waved me over to their table with a kind of enthusiasm that suggested she'd been hoping for this opportunity. "Louise, perfect timing," she said as I approached reluctantly. "Emma and I were just talking about you." "We're so excited about the cruise," Emma added, "but we want to make sure you know we're thinking about you too. We even talked about getting you a souvenir from each port." Souvenirs. They were planning to exclude me from the vacation of my dreams and bring me back trinkets as compensation. "That's very thoughtful," I said, not sitting down. "We should definitely all hang out when we get back," Jessica continued. "I feel like we haven't spent enough time together lately." This was rich, considering they'd spent the past month planning a vacation without me and were now acting like our decreased hangout time was just a natural occurrence, rather than the result of their secretive behavior. "Actually," Emma said, leaning forward conspiratorially, "Derek's been asking about you. He's excited to meet you properly when we get back. He knows how important you are to us." Important enough to be replaced by him on the trip I planned, but important enough to meet him afterward. The logic was breathtaking. "I'm sure he's lovely," I said. "I hope you all have a wonderful time on the cruise." "We will," Emma said, then caught herself. "I mean, we'll miss having you there, obviously." Obviously, like an afterthought, like something she just remembered she was supposed to say. I smiled and excused myself, claiming I had an appointment to get to. As I walked away, I heard Jessica say to Emma, "See, I told you she was fine with everything. Louise is always so understanding." Always so understanding. That's what I'd been to them. Someone who could be counted on to understand, to accommodate, to prioritize their needs over my own. Someone who would smile and nod when excluded, who would be grateful for souvenirs instead of experiences, who would always be there when they needed me, but never expect the same in return. That night, I finished packing the last of their gifts and wrote my final notes. As I sealed the boxes, I felt like I was closing a chapter of my life that had been holding me back from becoming the person I was meant to be. But the real test of my resolve came 2 nights before they left. Emma showed up at my apartment unannounced at 9 p.m., clearly having worked herself up into an emotional state. I almost didn't answer the door, but something about her frantic knocking made me concerned she'd wake my neighbors. "Louise, thank God," she said when I opened the door. "We need to talk. This whole thing has gotten so out of hand." I didn't invite her in. I just stood in the doorway. "What do you want to talk about, Emma?" "This silent treatment you're giving us. Jessica's been crying every day because she thinks you hate her, and I can't even focus on packing because I feel so guilty about how everything happened." The irony was stunning. They felt guilty about my reaction to their betrayal, but apparently hadn't felt guilty enough about the actual betrayal to reconsider it. "I don't hate Jessica," I said calmly. "I don't hate you either. I'm just not interested in maintaining friendships with people who would exclude me from something we planned together for 2 years." "But that's just it," Emma said, her voice getting higher. "We didn't plan this to hurt you. Derek has been going through such a hard time at work, and this cruise felt like exactly what he needed. When I saw how excited he got about the idea, I couldn't bear to tell him he couldn't come." "So instead you told me I couldn't come." "It wasn't like that. We just thought, I mean, you're so strong, Louise. You're so independent. We knew you'd understand that sometimes life requires sacrifices for the people we love." There it was again. My strength and independence being used as justification for treating me poorly. Because I was strong, I could handle being hurt. Because I was independent, I didn't need their consideration. It was a twisted logic that made my positive qualities into reasons why I deserved less care and respect. "Emma," I said quietly, "the fact that I'm strong enough to handle being treated badly doesn't mean I should have to. And the fact that I'm independent enough to be okay without you doesn't mean I deserve to be cast aside when someone more convenient comes along." She stared at me for a moment, and I could see her trying to process what I'd said. "Louise, you're making this so much more dramatic than it needs to be. It's one vacation. We'll take another trip together. Why can't you just be happy for me that I found someone I care about? I'm happy for you, Emma. I hope Derek makes you incredibly happy. But being happy for you doesn't require me to accept being treated as expendable in the process. She left that night frustrated and tearful, still not understanding that the issue wasn't her relationship with Derek, but how she'd chosen to prioritize that relationship over basic respect for me. I watched her walk to her car and felt nothing but relief that in 48 hours, this chapter would be closed forever. The girl who would accept souvenirs instead of inclusion was gone. The friend who would smile while being replaced was gone. The person who would prioritize other people's comfort over her own dignity was gone. In her place was someone who knew her worth and wouldn't settle for anything less than friendship that honored it. The day they left for their cruise, I was at work, but I checked Emma's Instagram story during my lunch break and saw her airport post about starting the adventure of a lifetime with my favorite people. I screenshot that post before blocking her on all platforms that evening. Then I supervised the movers loading my furniture into a truck for temporary storage until my move-in date 2 weeks later. Moving into my new apartment felt like emerging from a fog I didn't realize I'd been living in. Without Emma's constant presence, I discovered how much of my space and energy had been occupied by someone who saw me as disposable. Without Jessica's drama and need for constant validation, I found a peace I'd forgotten existed. I threw myself into work and discovered I was actually really good at it when I wasn't constantly distracted by friendship maintenance. I picked up freelance projects, started dating again, and began exploring parts of the city I'd never seen because Emma and Jessica had always wanted to go to the same familiar places. The cruise lasted 7 days. On day 8, I got my first indication that they'd returned home and discovered my gifts. Emma tried calling my old number repeatedly. When that didn't work, she created a fake Instagram account to try to message me. Jessica showed up at my old apartment only to find new tenants who had never heard of me. They tried reaching out through mutual friends, but I'd been careful about that too. I explained the situation to the people who mattered and everyone who knew. The three of us agreed that what Emma and Jessica had done was beyond the pale. Our college friend Mike actually laughed when he heard the story and said he'd always thought Emma was fake nice. Anyway, about 3 weeks after they returned, Emma managed to track down my work email address. She sent me a long message about how hurt she was that I'd overreacted to their vacation plans. She said they tried to give me space to cool down, but my behavior was immature and vindictive. She wanted to work things out because 8 years of friendship shouldn't end over one misunderstanding. One misunderstanding, that's what she called it. Jessica's approach was different. She managed to find my new apartment building by checking property management websites and cross-referencing my last known employment information, a level of detective work that was both impressive and disturbing. She showed up at my apartment on a Tuesday evening. I watched through the peephole as she knocked and called my name for 20 minutes. She left a letter under my door that I threw away without reading. The mutual friend attempts continued for about a month. Emma and Jessica would pump our college friends for information about me, asking if I'd mentioned them, if I seemed sad, if I was ready to talk. They painted themselves as the injured parties, just trying to salvage a friendship that I was being stubborn about. But here's what they didn't understand. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. For 8 years, I had centered my social life around people who were apparently capable of planning an elaborate betrayal while smiling to my face. I had prioritized their needs, accommodated their schedules, and assumed their loyalty because that's what I offered in return. The cruise situation hadn't revealed a new side of Emma and Jessica. It had revealed their true priorities. I was never going to be important enough to them to deserve basic respect or consideration. Realizing that was painful, but it was also liberating. 7 months later, I'm writing this from my beautiful apartment that no one crashes at uninvited. I'm in a relationship with an amazing man named Alex, who I met through a hiking group I joined after the move. I've been promoted at work and have a freelance business that's taking off. I've traveled to 3 different cities to visit friends and family I'd neglected while maintaining the exhausting job of being Emma and Jessica's third wheel. Last week, I ran into Emma at a coffee shop downtown. She saw me before I saw her, and by the time I noticed, she was already walking over with a determined expression. "Louise," she said, sitting down across from me without invitation, "this has gone on long enough. I miss you. Jessica misses you. We made a mistake, okay? We should have handled the cruise thing differently. I looked at her for a long moment, this person I'd once considered my best friend, and felt nothing but mild curiosity about why she thought she could just sit down and demand my attention. "Emma," I said calmly, "I'm not sure what you think is going on, but nothing has gone on long enough. I moved on from our friendship 6 months ago when you showed me it didn't mean to you what it meant to me. I'm not angry with you. I'm not punishing you. I'm just not interested in being friends with people who would treat me the way you and Jessica did." "But we were friends for 8 years," she protested. "That has to count for something." It did count for something. It counted for 2 years of saving money and making plans for a dream vacation that you gave to your secret boyfriend instead. It counted for years of me prioritizing your needs and assuming you'd do the same for me. Those 8 years taught me exactly what our friendship was worth to you, and I listened. Emma's face flushed. "You're being ridiculous. People make mistakes. Real friends forgive each other. Real friends don't exclude each other from shared dreams and call it a mistake when they get caught," I replied. "Real friends don't plan elaborate betrayals and expect forgiveness when the person they betrayed won't play along." I stood up to leave, and Emma grabbed my arm. "Louise, please, I know we hurt you, but don't you think you're being a little extreme? Moving away, changing your number, returning all our gifts. It's like you want to hurt us back." I gently removed her hand from my arm. "Emma, I never wanted to hurt you back. I just wanted to be free of people who could hurt me so casually in the first place. The fact that my absence hurts you now doesn't obligate me to return to a friendship where my presence clearly didn't matter enough to prevent you from hurting me then." As I walked away, I heard her call after me, "This isn't over, Louise. We're going to fix this." But it was over. It had been over the moment she told me the cruise was just for the three of us, and I realized I'd never actually been part of the us she was talking about. That night, Alex asked me how the encounter had made me feel. I thought about it for a while before answering. "Free," I said. "It made me feel free. Because that's what happens when you stop fighting for relationships with people who've already shown you where you stand. You discover that you can stand just fine on your own, and that the people worth standing with are the ones who would never ask you to prove your worth in the first place." Emma and Jessica got on their cruise with Derek. They got their perfect opportunity for a romantic getaway and their changed dynamic. What they didn't get was the safety net of a friend who would always be there no matter how they treated her, because that friend realized she deserved better. Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate or dramatic. Sometimes it's just the quiet dignity of knowing your worth and walking away from people who don't recognize it. Sometimes it's building a life so fulfilling that you genuinely forget to miss what you left behind. They said the vacation was just for the three of us and booked their luxury cruise without me. I didn't argue because arguing would have implied that their decision was up for debate. Instead, I showed them the same consideration they'd shown me. None at all. I moved out, changed my number, and sent back every gift they'd ever given me. They came back to silence, and that silence was my answer. Not because I wanted to punish them, but because I finally understood that some relationships aren't worth the energy it takes to maintain them, and some people aren't worth the pain it takes to love them. I hope their cruise was everything they dreamed it would be. I hope Derek was worth losing a friend over. I hope they learned something about loyalty and friendship, though I doubt they did. As for me, I learned that sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is to let people show you who they are, believe them, and respond accordingly. I learned that you can't force people to value you, but you can absolutely refuse to devalue yourself for them. And I learned that walking away from a toxic situation doesn't make you the villain in someone else's story. It makes you the hero in your own.